had people and men say especially, well, if you didn't dress like that. Yes, exactly. If you
Are
didn't
you
dress
an
like
animal?
that, you have welcomed it because you have dressed like that.
Are
Or
you an animal?
are you an animal? Is your
Surely.
answer. Yeah.
Have you no control
Yeah.
over your urges?
Yeah.
Um, that you can tell that really just grates my tits. Because
Yeah,
I
it
think,
also means it's just like,
yeah, I feel like it's just,
it's a very poor excuse.
yeah, and you're
Yeah.
blaming
You're
the person that you offended
Yeah.
for an inability to control yourself.
Yeah.
And yeah, all the Christians and the moralists are going to tell me, oh, you shouldn't wear something that's too short, or you shouldn't wear clothes that's too tight. But you'll find that sexual violence is meted against women. Like, it's not about what you're wearing.
Yeah, it's not.
If someone
9 to 5 has good vibes, but 9 to 5 with Ngari has better.
Sexual harassment is a common workplace experience, and it affects both men and women. And I guess sometimes it's not easy to understand what sexual harassment means. Is it telling someone they look nice? Is it like physical touch? What is exactly sexual harassment? And I think a couple years ago, there was the Me Too movement, which was really around sexual harassment. It was hard getting a guest to talk about this, to be honest. But I'm excited. I got someone, and I'll just switch over so that we can do some intros and find out about our guest.
Thank you.
How are you?
I'm fine. How are you doing?
I'm good. Tell us about yourself, who you are, what you do. Yeah.
Okay, so my name is Yvonne Anyango Oyieke. I studied law.
Nice.
But I am a human rights advocate. I think that's a term I prefer to use.
Okay.
So that means that I engage in advocacy around the promotion and protection of the rights of women
Awesome.
in a civil society context. But then I'm also a lecturer. So I teach especially equality law and legal philosophy. So I think, that's how I describe myself. Passionate about women and their rights, but also really interested in just learning and sharing the knowledge that I pick up along the way.
Awesome. Cool. That's a good intro. And you are a founding member or like a co-founder of an organization, right?
So I'm serving as the executive
Executive director, yeah?
of an organization called Utuwetu.
Yeah.
And our motto is our dignity, our humanity.
Yeah.
And what we set out to do is to hold the government accountable for human rights violations.
Okay.
But we have a bias towards the protection of women's rights.
Yeah.
So in this respect, we've been working a lot around accountability for sexual violence, especially violence in conflict. So work around electoral violence.
Okay, yeah. That's a major
We
one,
were
yeah.
a party to the constitutional petition around sexual and gender-based violence during the 2007 post-election
Okay, gotcha.
period, and continue to work around accountability for especially sexual violence, but human rights violations in general.
All right. Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you for being an activist. I'm glad to hear someone's working on this. I guess let's get into the topic. What exactly is sexual harassment? Yeah.
So the definition that I often rely on
Yeah.
is the United Nations one. So I
Okay.
mean, there are a lot of definitions that
Yeah.
you can probably even in the dictionary,
Yeah.
But I think the UN one gives like a good description of what sexual harassment entails. So defined as unwelcome sexual advances, requests for sexual favors, and other verbal or physical conduct of a physical nature.
Yeah.
And especially within the context of the workplace,
Yeah.
it also includes when submission to such conduct is made explicitly or implicitly a term or a condition of an individual's employment.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
this
Gotcha.
means that you know how you respond to these advances and these requests for sexual favors really impacts your
Your
experience in the
experience.
workplace.
Yeah.
The extent to which you are able to even get a promotion, or
Yeah.
like your job, your
Yeah.
ability to perform within your role is really dependent on how you respond to
And
these.
providing like yeah.
Exactly. But I mean, that's just one example.
Yeah. Yeah.
But in general, it refers to unwelcome sexual advances or requests for sexual favors, or verbal or physical conduct of a sexual nature within the workplace that's unwelcome.
That's unwelcomed.
Yeah.
So I guess like how would someone telling Wangari you look nice today, or I love your dress, or I love your hair, or what is that sexual harassment? Because I have seen a few cases where like that has been like in other countries where that has come up as like sexual harassment. And is it just giving a comment on like people's appearance? Would that be sexual harassment?
I think the key issue here is unwelcome.
It's unwelcomed.
Welcome or unwelcome.
Yeah.
So I think it's okay to compliment someone.
Yeah.
You know what? You look really nice
You look
today.
nice. Yeah.
But I think you can tell when someone is being lewd.
Yes. There's a
You-
sliminess and ickiness
Exactly.
to it. Yeah.
You can tell when someone is giving you a compliment in a way that's not genuine, in a way that's
Yeah.
sexual, in the way in how they phrased it and in how they approach you. It's good enough to say, I really like your dress today.
Yeah.
But you don't have to go further and say, I love how it frames,
Yeah, exactly.
you know,
Your body
that-
and that kind of stuff.
that
yeah.
then takes it within the realm of, harassment.
Yeah.
Because I'm depending on the nature of your relationship,
Yeah.
I'm not sure that would always be a
Welcome.
welcome.
Yeah. Got it.
Or
Understood.
or if someone gives you a compliment or tells you something like that, and you're like, okay, you know what, thank you, but I find it a bit weird
Yeah.
that that's something that you would notice, and then they continue to do it, then that would also qualify, because I mean, they've made you uncomfortable.
Yeah, uncomfortable.
Exactly. So I think it's that the defining feature is this unwanted
Unwanted.
attention.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you, I mean, you don't have to answer it, but have you ever experienced sexual harassment in the workspace?
I mean, yeah. I think a lot of people have.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
And I think because a lot of this behavior is normalized,
Yeah.
you don't even think about it as inappropriate.
Yeah.
So, to my mind, I can think of two scenarios.
Yeah.
Although I think there've probably been more, but I'm just like, whatever.
Yeah.
That's just men being men.
Yeah.
So when I was in university,
Yeah.
there was one of my lecturers.
Oh my.
Yeah. This is a tale that persists regardless
Oh,
of
man.
where you are.
Yeah.
Nairobi, South Africa, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Men are consistent in their behavior. But in any case, so he brought me on as an assistant
Okay.
to help him with a research project. So here I am, young, impressionable. I'm like, look, I'm going to be working with a great professor. I'm going to be doing all of these wonderful human rights things. And then he invites me to a trip to Addis.
A work trip, yeah?
Yeah, well, a work trip.
Yeah, yeah.
And honestly, I didn't think anything of it.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, he's a professor. Like, I genuinely just didn't think anything. And I think that's, like, story of my life. I just don't think about these things. When I tell my friend, he's like, so how are you going?
Yeah.
Because we're the ones who are organizing that trip. You're not on the itinerary.
Oh, wow.
Like you don't feature anywhere on the plan. So does that mean that he's paying out of his pocket? And like, what are the terms? Where are you staying? What
Red flags, yeah.
Yeah, like, how are you getting there? Just ask for some more details.
Yeah.
And when I did, like, he got like really irritated with me. Like, how dare you ask these sort of things? How dare
Yeah.
you suggest that I'm being inappropriate or untoward? And just completely cancelled my contract with him.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So you cancelled or he
He did.
he cancelled
He
it.
cancelled.
Oh, wow.
Because I called him out and
Yeah.
but I don't think my request was unreasonable.
Of course not.
Just show
Definitely.
me
Show me like, why am I coming? What is the purpose?
where am I going to
We're
be staying?
staying.
What are the details of,
Yeah.
So I think that was the first experience. And it turns out that there were quite a few other students who'd also had the
Oh,
same sort
no.
of problem with him. So in the time that it happened to me, I was like, maybe I'm being a little bit dramatic.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe I took it out of context.
Yeah.
And I've missed out on a good opportunity. But you know what? Whatever, I let it go. The second time was a few years ago. I was working in an NGO, an international NGO. And our partnership, or the partnership that I was managing,
Yeah.
was with a university in the region. Maybe let
Okay.
me not say the
Yeah.
name.
Just in the region. Yep.
So the partner, because it was an academic cooperation,
Yeah.
so I had to interact a lot with the dean
Okay.
of a particular faculty of law, and he was a very difficult character,
Yeah.
and like moody, and I don't want to be rude and say typically male.
Yeah.
But he was a particularly difficult character, and he was berating and he was rude. And I know a lot of it had to do with the fact that I was young, female, and black. But anyway, there was one time we went to that country to have an activity that we were implementing together. So I was with one of my male colleagues.
Okay.
So this time he invited us out. He's like, oh, let's go and have dinner together, because I was with my male colleague, Yvonne on her own. We don't do this kind of thing.
No, yeah.
So anyway, we go out, and then like he just starts, like making advances, made me very uncomfortable.
In public.
Yeah, in public.
Okay. Yeah.
And as the night progressed, like his advances got more obvious.
And at this time, the male colleague is there.
He's there, and he's like, what's
yeah.
going on? What's happening here? Because we've never interacted like that.
Yeah.
Because I've told you, he's been rude.
Yeah.
He's been berating.
Yeah.
He's moody.
Yeah.
He speaks to me in any way that he wants, like absolutely no respect.
Yeah.
So it was very strange for him to be behaving in this way, like hanging about and like trying to touch me and like, being in my face and like,
Oh no.
But anyway, went out after, and of course, as he had more drinks and his behavior became a little bit more untoward. So, I mean, there was a point I literally had to put my male colleague as like a buffer, exactly, between the two of us, because it was just making me really uncomfortable.
That's really sad.
But in the way that women tend to, I didn't think anything about. I was just like, you know what, he was drunk. I let it go. But it's only when I came back to Nairobi and I told our director at the time what happened, that he's like, actually, that's not normal.
Not right.
That's not okay. That's not acceptable behavior. And gave me our sexual harassment policy.
Oh, wow.
Yes. And told me to read it and asked me if I actually wanted to pursue an investigation on it.
Yeah.
So it actually took someone else pointing out to me the problem with that behavior for me to actually take it seriously.
Yeah.
Because in the way that we normally do, you just sort of shrug it off.
Yeah.
So, I mean, those are the two examples I can think of.
Interesting.
Yeah.
When you pointed out the second example, it made me think of the time that I experienced like sexual harassment. And I remember I used to work in an office where you sit like just like, opposite each other. And it was a HR colleague who came to me, and he told me, he came and like rubbed my back, and he told me, you look very, very nice today. You're glowing. You must have like said something rude about, I must have had like sex in the morning. And I was just like, and I remember like, I just shuddered, like I rolled my eyes and I was just like, what the hell? And I remember the guy who was sitting opposite me, like this guy did that and walked away. The guy who was sitting opposite me was like, that didn't make you feel comfortable, did it? I was like, oh yeah, no, definitely didn't make me feel comfortable. He's like, you should do something about it. I was like, you know what? You're right. And it's just like, sometimes, it happens to you and it takes someone else to point it out, because you'd be like, yeah, it happens, But it is a very uncomfortable situation,
Compounded by the power relations in that
Exactly, yeah.
particular context,
In
because
that context. Yeah.
this is an HR
Exactly.
colleague.
Yeah.
The sort of power that they wield within an office
Yeah.
to make things difficult for you,
Yeah.
even if you're not in the wrong. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, like it's very obvious to you the potential problems
It's
that could come
exactly.
with you actually speaking out and enforcing
Yeah.
your rights. And that's why they do it,
Yeah.
because they know there's a very good likelihood, because of the position that they hold, that they can get away with
That they
it.
can get away with.
Yeah.
I guess as we've clearly mentioned, I think like it often happens to, and I mean I want to be clear that it happens to men and women.
It's true.
Yeah, but of course more women than men. But what happens, and what advice would you give to someone who's young coming into like an organization? Again, there's that hierarchy, there's that command, that power, and that a person who can, affect on this person, like the junior person. What advice would you give this person?
Yeah,
Because it's tough. Like
it is.
sometimes it's like this: the people with power, the ones who make all the decisions, know everything that's going on. So it's like you're reporting to someone, and you feel like it won't make a difference. Yeah.
I mean, it's always a tough position to be in. But I think, given the recent attention, or the recent discourse that has happened, especially after the Me Too movement,
Yeah.
I think organizations are more careful or more intentional when it comes to their frameworks around preventing or responding to sexual harassment.
Yeah.
So, more often than not, an organization will have a policy in place, a very clear way in which you would be able to report or even identify that particular action, or that something has made you uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Ordinarily, there would be a framework in place that
Okay.
makes it very clear that this is what we mean when we speak about harassment. This is what we mean when we speak about sexual harassment.
Yeah.
And if you think that this has happened to you, then these are the channels that you follow.
Yeah.
Your direct line manager. If your line manager is not responsive, you can go above your line. Like
Yeah.
those mechanisms are in place.
What happens if it's the CEO or like as we saw in like the scandals that came out on Twitter around like sexual harassment in like Kenyan organization? What happens in that case when the person is a person of power? And sometimes I guess you fall into like women fall into two boxes. You either succumb to it and you're like, you know what? We'll just go with the flow, and then there's those who would want to report. What do you do when it's like that person of power who's come to you? It's like, to me, I'd feel like very helpless.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, oh my God, like where do I go?
Yeah. And it is debilitating.
Yeah.
It's indignifying.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe confiding in a trusted colleague.
Yeah.
Sometimes it helps to share your experience with someone else.
Yeah.
And get out of your head and see the best way that you would be able to respond in that particular context.
Yeah.
More often than not, if someone tells you that this constitutes sexual harassment, then you have a decision to make.
Yeah, it's at the end of your call. Yeah.
I chose to report it,
Yes.
even though it didn't end the way that I expected.
Exactly. Yeah.
I still felt vindicated in the fact that, my version was acknowledged as the truth.
Yeah.
So whereas, the specific actions that I would have liked to follow didn't happen. To the fact that, I wasn't crazy.
Yeah.
It actually did happen.
Yeah.
And they were wrong for it. I think there's a lot of vindication that comes in that.
In this,
Exactly.
someone being on your team and
I
be
think
like,
so.
I'm sorry that, yeah.
So I think if you have a trusted colleague or a friend that you can, sort of work through what your next response would be, I definitely think so. But also, if there are those mechanisms within
The
an organization,
use the mechanisms.
I definitely think you should use the mechanisms, especially because these days it's not as easy for someone, regardless of the position that they hold within a particular organization, to come off clean, for lack of a better word, for any accusation of sexual harassment.
Yeah.
No one wants that on their shoulders. No one
Yeah.
wants that as a cross you're carrying. So if there are mechanisms within your particular organization, I definitely say that you should follow them
Follow
through.
that. Yeah.
Yes.
Awesome. Cool. With talking about policies and frameworks, maybe we can talk around like what kind of training needs to happen, because I think as we said, it's sometimes it's a very gray subject. Like I don't know why like sometimes it could be obvious to me and you, but it's not
Yeah.
obvious to other individuals.
Yeah.
Is there like training that people should be doing or
Yeah.
thinking around to just help like educate people like
Yeah.
this is right, this is not right?
Yeah. I think the conversations around, I think what they call it is values clarification workshops.
Yeah.
I think it's definitely important at an organizational level. If you're going to be bringing people together, you have to make it clear what constitutes good behavior and what doesn't.
Yeah.
I think the UN instruments have even provided the necessary tools.
Oh, nice.
The
UN
International
instruments.
Labour Organization, for example, has specific tools that an organization would be able to take on and modify for their own particular circumstances.
Yeah.
To take their employees through a discussion on what sexual harassment constitutes. If you have a policy, an internal one, it's imperative that you explain to them that the policy exists and the implications of that particular policy. I mean, we do it with the other policies. You'll
Yes.
explain your HR policy.
Cybersecurity.
Exactly.
All this
You'll
other-
explain your financial policy. Why don't you do the same
Yeah.
when it comes to sexual harassment? We sort of seem to bury our heads in the sand
Yeah.
as if these things are not happening. And just because it's normal doesn't mean it's right. And it's normal because of many years of people behaving in this way and no one actually calling you out on it.
Yeah.
The fact that you can't touch your colleague inappropriately
Yes.
on her back and tell her your skin is glowing, you must
Yeah.
have gotten it really good last night. That's none
Yeah,
of your
it's-
business.
Exactly. Yeah.
Tell me I look good and keep it pushing. Why did you have to
Yeah.
move it to that level? It's because people have gotten away with what has been normalized behavior for such a long time. And there's definitely a need to have the conversations
Have those
around
conversations.
them. So if you have an internal policy, in the same way you take your employees through discussions around different aspects of your work, I think you must also have particular trainings around sexual harassment, just so that they understand that this is not, this is what the policy is. This is what sexual harassment constitutes. This behavior is wrong. This behavior is acceptable. So that they also understand. And if they continue to do it, then, and you hold them accountable, then no one can fault you for it because you already told them what behavior is acceptable or not. Because like you say, sometimes, because it's so normal, you don't even think, you don't even think there's anything wrong with it.
All right, cool.
Yeah.
I guess now just shifting gears to, I guess the first time, I think I had this term maybe 3-4 years ago, sexually transmitted promotions.
Yeah.
STPs.
Yeah.
Where does that lie? Like, what is that like? It kind of feels like it's very gray. It happens in corporates, it happens in small organizations where people are told provide these sexual favors and you will be promoted.
Yeah.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on that? Yeah.
I definitely, I think it lies in between, I actually think it's a violence.
It's a violence.
I
Okay.
definitely, violence is not always physical.
Yeah.
I
know. Yep.
And I think sexual harassment falls within like the broader the realm of sexual violence. Mm-hmm. But sex for marks, sex for promotion, I think relates to the same thing.
Yeah.
And I think the gray area comes because seems like there's consent.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it seems that it is very consensual.
Right?
So, yeah.
So, you just take yourself there, if you sleep with your lecturer,
You'll get
they'll
a
pass you.
good grade, yeah.
Or if you offer your boss a sexual favor, then they'll promote you.
Promote you, yeah.
But I think they are taking advantage
Yeah.
of a position of
power. Yeah.
Because if you are duly qualified
Yeah.
for that position,
Yeah.
then you shouldn't have to perform a sexual act in order for that position to be confirmed.
Yeah.
If it's been advertised and you've gone through the process and you qualify, all factors notwithstanding, you shouldn't have to put out, for lack of a better term,
Yeah.
in order for you to gain that position. The person who puts you in that position does so because they are taking advantage.
They're taking advantage.
Yeah, of the power that they hold.
Yeah.
And it's coercive because you know that if you don't do it, then you're not going to get
Yeah.
the job. And if you look at the profile, maybe people can be audacious
Yeah.
in that way. But in general, they tend to take advantage of a vulnerability.
A vulnerability, yeah.
Yes. So someone who puts you in that position has identified something that makes you vulnerable.
Yeah.
And they push on that to gain sexual favors from you. And, you don't even always get those promotions.
Yeah, exactly.
Sometimes you have you have intercourse with your boss.
Yeah.
Because he says, what, if you don't do this, you're not going to progress.
Yeah.
So you do it, but then he'll keep you in that position anyway.
Yeah.
And continue to, exploit that particular situation because he knows he can.
Yeah.
Or because she knows she can.
Yeah.
So I definitely think it's harassment.
You think it's harassment?
Because, like we said, unwanted sexual advances. And unwanted includes also coercive acts of sex.
Yeah.
Where if you had an alternative choice, that may not be the choice that you have made.
Yeah. True.
And that's not, it could be consensual. You could look at your boss and think, you know what, to hell with it. He looks good. Let's have a good time, regardless of how it ends.
Yeah.
Everything is everything. But if or if for you, that job is dependent on you having this relationship, that's exploitative.
Yeah.
And there's no way that you can tell me that that's not coercive and that because you carried yourself to the hotel, then it does not constitute harassment or a particular form of violence. The only reason you are put in that position is because they exploited a particular vulnerability. Okay. So I definitely think that falls within the realm of sexual harassment. I think it can be likened to sex for marks as well. I think
for sure.
There's been a big scandal around that. Mm-hmm. A few exposés in the media, BBC, on how lecturers take advantage of their positions to gain sexual favor from their students.
When I joined first year, I was 17 years old, and I really didn't know what was happening, what was going on in campus. And something that works to my disadvantage mostly was the fact that I was transferring from another university to join the university that I'm currently studying at. And so I was late. I found students already studying. So in my effort to try and catch up with the studies, I think one of my male lecturers somehow figured out that I needed a lot of learning materials and stuff like that. So this guy kept on calling me to pick assignments, to pick extra study materials, and this went on and on until to the point that he started asking for sexual favors, and I didn't know really what I could have done because myself, I was so scared of. That particular guy he's a very harsh lecturer. Like when he comes to class, students are just like, damn.
Yeah.
And I definitely think that constitutes harassment.
It constitutes
Yeah.
harassment.
Yeah. And
Okay.
violence even.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess for me, like, it's a tough one because I don't know, like, you had a decision. As you said, it was a decision. It was a decision to say yes or no. And it kind of felt like you went with a yes. And then you've gained all this additional favors in the workplace because you've had sexual favors with someone of power. And I do think it will start a culture. When one person does this, someone will be like, oh, this is how you get ahead in this organization. Let me put myself forward. When you're bringing in younger people or new, fresh talent into an organization and they start seeing this, it just starts becoming a norm, which is a very unfortunate place to be or even like to walk into because you're like, yeah, this is not for me. But yeah, that is super clear to me. Thanks for, and hopefully to the audience.
Yeah. But I mean, they're unlikely to put a peer in that position.
Yeah.
So it's not likely that if you're hiring for, it's not likely. I'm not saying it's impossible.
Yeah.
But it's unlikely that a CEO would require a chief financial officer,
Yeah.
a woman who's interviewing for a chief financial officer position, to give him sexual favors
Yeah.
to gain that position.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, you never know. But I guess
Yeah.
it's an interesting one. It's an
is.
interesting topic.
It is.
Another one on like sexual harassment. I think even like when you are beginning, you are very strong around like it affects women. I do think when it affects men, it's like harder. It's like the toll is harder because like you're a man. It's like, how are you sexually harassed by a woman? Like, like then there's that stigma that comes with like when it's like it's been done to a male.
It's true.
Yeah, how can that stigma be broken? How can we have more conversations around this? Because I think a lot of the conversations are on the women. And I remember like the Johnny Depp and Amber, I've forgotten her last name. Everyone was at the beginning Amber Heard. Everyone at the beginning was like, yeah, it's Johnny Depp. And then when you get into things, you're like,
you actually listen.
Oh, yeah, maybe not. Yeah, how do we make sure both genders or both people are being listened to in an organization?
Yeah. It's really unfortunate. I feel really bad for men.
Yeah.
It must be hard to experience all of these things and not be able to speak about them because people will, one, not believe you or shame you because of our particular culture. They often say that sexual harassment, sexual violence, sexual and gender-based violence, etc., disproportionately affect women. But I think the numbers may not be as far as we think. It's just that it's more normal for a woman to talk about it.
Yeah.
It's more socially sanctioned. There's no... I mean, yes, there's still that sense of, oh my God, I'm so sorry. But, that disdain and that shame that comes with making such an admission, I think is less when a woman reports, maybe because it's more normalized than a man. I think if men had or felt safe enough to actually speak about their particular experiences, we would find that it's not that different in terms of the numbers. I definitely think it speaks to, so within an organization, it speaks to the culture within that particular organization. I think there has to be an effort, a concerted effort to let men and women know that this behavior is wrong either way.
Yeah.
But it's also a broader social issue.
Yeah, true. It is way broader, yeah.
It's a broader social issue because while your workplace may be this free space that you can speak about the things that affect you.
This home.
Exactly. And if you
Yeah.
come out and actually make such an admission,
Yeah.
you see the jokes that come with it. In fact,
Yeah.
recently there was an issue in an organization where one of the senior female employees
Yeah.
was accused of sexual harassment.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Is this in Kenya?
in Kenya.
Was it out in like? Is it?
Yeah,
Okay.
it was.
Okay.
So I won't say the organization's name. We could talk about it after.
Yeah.
But the thing that really struck me was all of the comments.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like, what sort of a man is that?
Oh no. Yeah.
Because the things that they were describing, if it was a woman who had experience, then there'd be no question.
There'll be an abomination and cancelling and
You see?
Yeah.
But now because it's a man, they're like, what kind of a man are you?
Yeah.
A woman comes onto you and the thing that you decide to do is report them. No.
Oh no.
As a man, you should actually, give her what she wants.
Oh wow.
But, I mean, here they are coming and saying to you that I didn't appreciate this woman's advances.
Yeah.
And it constitutes...
It was unwelcomed. That
Yes,
is all
exactly.
it is. It's just been unwelcomed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I definitely think there needs to be a broader social or societal
Conversation,
discussion.
yeah,
Yeah,
around
definitely.
this.
In schools,
Yeah.
universities are a breeding ground for
Are they a
sexual
breeding
harassment.
ground?
They really
No.
are. I think there needs to be more of these conversations that bring to light what behavior is problematic and also show sanction for the people who are found to have behaved against the policies or whatever. There needs to be more conversations like the ones that we are having now.
Yeah.
Amongst peers, in schools, at homes, just so that people understand that unwanted sexual advances are unwanted sexual advances.
Yeah.
They're not right, and it's not a mark of manhood to take those unwanted advances in stride. If they make you uncomfortable, you shouldn't have to suffer through it simply because of our particular notions of manhood and masculinity. But I think we have some way to go.
We have some way to go. I
We have some way to
definitely
go.
agree. We have a long way to go.
Yeah.
Yeah, quite a long way to
Yeah.
go. So I guess now an individual has reported that they've been sexually harassed, and this is being addressed. How can an organization protect the individual who's reported from some form of retaliation, especially if it is someone of power?
I mean, it depends on the organization's structures.
Yeah.
If, for example, it is a subordinate who had a challenge with someone along their reporting line, to the extent possible, you can shift that and have them report to someone else. You can take for lack of a better word, offender.
They are an offender.
Through, fair enough, take the offender.
Yeah.
You can take them through like a specialized workshop for just them.
Just offender workshops. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sexual offender workshops.
To also ensure that they understand what was wrong with their behavior.
With their behavior.
So that measures are put in place for them to not repeat it.
Yeah.
Depending on the structure of your organization, you can, because in terms of the law, you're also limited with respect to what you can withhold, from them. But I think there are adjustments you can make to their role to accommodate some sort of sanction for that kind of behavior. So to the extent that they are able to still fulfill their role, maybe this person won't report to them. Maybe they have to check in every so often when it comes to particular behavioral workshops for the staff member. You can have some psychosocial support in
which
place.
is important. Yeah.
If you don't have that available within your organization, then maybe you can facilitate such access outside of, pay for them to go to a counselor and just
Counselor.
work through
Yeah.
the feelings that have come from that particular interaction. And, minimize their contact with the offender, have check-ins with different staff members, HR, a new line manager. I think the possibilities are...
There are many.
There are very many, just depending on, the organization, the structure of the organization.
Yeah.
And also what I don't like the word victim, the survivor, what their particular views and their feelings are with respect to that particular situation. But I think there are certain measures that you can put in place to, one, ensure that the offender is aware
That
of
this was
exactly
not right.
An apology, maybe. Like, you need to make them aware of the problem with their behavior. But I think for the person who experienced the harassment, there are also measures that you can put in place. If they're comfortable receiving the apology, well and good. If they would rather be moved to a different department, if it's possible, or change the line manager so they don't have to interact with this person as much, then I think you can also do that. But
Okay, cool.
there are options.
What about if they are known offenders? And because, like reality, some organizations, they're known sex offenders in the workplace. You're like, yeah, that one, I'm sorry you're reporting into him. Like, I remember just having a conversation with friends around this. They're like, for example, if he asks you to drop you somewhere, if you're going for a meeting, just be like, no, I'm good. Let me use public transport. Never accept to be in a meeting alone with this person. So would you suggest people find like ways to avoid sexual offenders in the workplace? Or because reality is,
It's true.
yeah,
Yeah.
people have families to feed, and
It's unfortunate.
yeah, it is. It's very unfortunate. I
So
agree with
that's,
you. It's very, very unfortunate.
Yeah, that's the advice you have to give
Yeah,
people.
yeah.
But I mean, it's true. In the
Yeah.
same way, you're told don't go into certain parts of town
Exactly,
at night.
yeah, at night. Yeah.
Even though there are all of these mechanisms in place, don't put yourself in the line of danger.
Yeah.
And I really do think it's unfortunate that that's the advice that we have to give.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's true. Because of the society that we live in. There are certain people who are known, like you say. In fact, I can think of some examples of, and this is with respect to problematic lecturers.
Yeah.
It's even a running joke.
There's a running, wow.
I've heard. And I think we also saw in the BBC expose.
Yeah.
I think public universities generally tend to have that particular challenge.
Yeah.
And there's a running joke. You even mentioned the type of students that they like. I mean, it's a sad thing. But the truth is, like you say, perhaps in addition to all of the safeguards that have been put in place.
Tactical tips. Exactly.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
So, it's good to be forewarned. So that, if you're walking along the corridor and you're alone and this person appears, find somewhere to
Turn
exit,
around.
But definitely, like you say, we also have to do what we can to, sort of keep ourselves safe.
Yeah.
In instances where we know that, certain people have a reputation, you do what you can to avoid it. Yeah. And, if despite all of the efforts that you've put, this person is still in your face and persistent, then there are mechanisms within an organization. Yeah.
Awesome, cool. I think we've talked about everything around this subject, unless there's something that I missed or any burning last parting shots or you know.
I mean, maybe just thank you
You're
for taking the bull by the horns. It's not an easy or comfortable
Yeah.
discussion. I think we do have a pervasive culture of harassment.
Full stop. Even just walking down the street,
Yeah.
men are just. I mean, I guess men. I don't know if men go through this, but everyone has a
Catcalling,
comment.
yeah.
Catcalling, have a comment. It's a lot. Yeah.
Entitlement to your space and
Yeah.
your body.
Yeah.
So, I appreciate you for starting the conversation. I hope that it continues and
Yep.
you're able to continue to have the discussion with as many people and hopefully with, as many organizations so that people can actually begin to appreciate the
Yeah.
gravity
Of-
of harassment and the impact it has on the people
On the
who have
individual.
on the people who've
Yeah.
experienced
Do you know of
it.
any organization, like, say, if I was that's outside of the workplace, if I was sexually harassed, where you could call or just that could offer support?
Like in terms of immediate response, I know there are a lot of organizations that focus on the protection of women's rights.
Yeah.
So FIDA Kenya,
Yeah.
for example,
Yeah.
I know would be a good avenue for like that immediate relief if, for example, your organization is not, hasn't taken your particular issue seriously and you'd like to move it forward, maybe take the person to court. I think, like a civil action
Yeah.
for a particular violation of your rights. I think organizations such as FIDA would be in a good position to do that, or depending on the industry in which you work, I know there are regulating authorities that would be able to, that you may be able to go to enforce a particular code of conduct.
I wish tech had that.
Isn't there? There should be.
No. There is no regulatory.
Oh, no, that's a gap.
It's very unfortunate.
That's a gap that definitely needs to be.
It's definitely a gap.
Because if you're a lawyer, for example, the Law Society of Kenya is generally the body through which advocate accountability
exactly.
Is enforced. So if you do feel that there's been behavior that constitutes sexual harassment and in your organization there's no appropriate response, then in addition to an organization such as FIDA, I think you would be able to go to the Law Society because there's a code of conduct for lawyers. So if anyone steps out against that particular code of conduct, then the Law Society would be in a position to respond. And I'm sure it's the same within
doctors,
exactly,
and all other kind of professions.
I think there would be
food for thought. a gap.
Yeah,
There's
definitely need to look into this gap.
Always.
Yeah.
Cool. Actually, another question just came to mind that I always hear. Sometimes quoted. We've defined that sexual harassment is unwelcoming.
Yeah.
I've had people and men say especially, well, if you didn't dress like that. Yes, exactly. If you didn't dress like that, you have welcomed it because you have dressed like that.
Are you an animal?
Are you an animal?
Surely.
Yeah.
Have you no control over your urges?
Yeah.
That you can tell that really just grates my tits.
Yeah,
I think,
also means it's just like...
Yeah, I feel like it's just...
It's a very poor excuse.
Yeah, and you're blaming the person that you offended for an inability to control yourself.
Yeah.
And all the Christians and the moralists are going to tell me, or you shouldn't wear something that's too short, or you shouldn't wear clothes that's too tight. But you'll find that sexual violence is meted against women. Like, it's not about what you're wearing.
Yeah, it's not.
If someone wants to, if there's a sexual advance against you, whether you're fully clothed or not, like, that person is going to do it anyway.
It's relevant, yeah.
Yeah, because stories of women who have been raped,
Yeah.
it's not always because of, she was wearing something short and I couldn't help myself. Like, how do you account for the rape of young children? Or how do you account for the rape of elderly women who are, in any case, not walking around in booty shorts and crop tops?
Yeah.
It's got absolutely nothing to do with what I'm wearing and everything to do with the psychology of the person who does this thing.
Acts, yeah.
So, I mean, I think it's nonsense.
It's nonsense.
I really think it's nonsense. If you're going to tell me on the basis of, like a general moral or modesty discussion or whatever, you shouldn't wear clothes that are too short or too tight, whatever. But as a reason
to take it to the next level, like
as a reason, as a reason that someone harassed me, as a reason that it's not me. It's not anything I did. Because you could have done all the right things.
Yeah.
If that person is going to harass you, they will.
Reason,
regardless of what you're wearing. So, I mean, that's just, no. And you can tell it really annoys me. Because I'm like, what are you saying? What's that? No.
Nonsense.
It absolutely is nonsense. It's got nothing to do with what I'm wearing. And everything to do with your bad manners.
Yeah.
Yes.
Gotcha. Loud and clear.
Yes. Maybe that should be the parting shot. It's got
Even
nothing.
the beginning to get people.
Thank you. It's got nothing to do with what they were wearing or they did, and everything to do with that person's bad manners and an inability to control themselves and behave.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. I guess there you have it. Sexual harassment is unwelcome. Suggestions or topics or touches, if it's not been welcomed, it's harassment. I'd love to hear your thoughts, comments. Share your stories on sexual harassment. I think it's really important to share your stories. The more we open up and talk about these things, the more we can have conversation and strategies to deal with this. And this is for both men and women. Yeah. So thanks for listening. Thank you so much for coming on set. It's been amazing.
Thank you for having me.
Kwaheri.
9 to 5 has good vibes, but 9 to 5 with Ngari has better.